are you getting the most out of your physical therapy front desk? And we have excellent panelists, as we always do. So I would like to just first start by introducing, we have Jennifer Till, who is not only the jack of all trades, but she is assistant to Brian. So that is amazing in itself. But she also is our client liaison. We have Scott Wilson from Raxia, and he is the head of product. And we also have Andy Kuan from Raxia, and he is the CEO. And they're going to tell you a lot more about Raxia. So, stay tuned. We're going to talk all about their product. It's an excellent one. The things that we're going to really dive in today is we're going to talk about the importance of that front desk position. I think it is often kind of, underrepresented. And we often will say it is one of the key, integral pieces of things going right in the success of your business. So it's great that we're focusing on this today. And we're also going to talk about how this role of the front desk has evolved in light of the pandemic. This role has kind of changed over the course of the last year. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're also going to talk about the challenges that you have with hiring and personnel, management, as well as the cost of labor that's increasing and how we're going to compensate and overcome that. And, what role does technology have in making things more efficient at the front desk? I am going to pop up some links here. So Matthew is going to pop up our resource guide, which we have, that is a wealth of information in there. It is probably one of our most downloaded forms. So please take advantage of that. There's a lot of info. I do want to pop up the link to Raxia, because I do want you to learn more about that company. Again, as we talked to both Andy and Scott, they're going to kind of fill you in, but so you have that link readily available. And then also let you know that our next Zoom chat is scheduled for June, and it's likely going to be on the topic of recruiting and hiring. So you kind of have those things on tap. The first thing I want to start with talking about this front desk is we're going to review, for those of you that are MEG Academy clients, I want to really take some time to review the front desk management system. So Matthew, if you can kind of start by popping up slide 1, that would be helpful. The front desk management system is going to comprise multiple people on your team. So it's going to be your front desk coordinator. It's going to be the patient care representative. It's going to be the physical therapist, as well as your billing team. And basically all of those posts have to be working together to make sure that things are going right at the front desk. So it's not just all on the front desk and it's all the responsibility for things to go right there. It has to be a collective team approach. So we're going to go through each of those, people's roles. The front desk coordinator is the gatekeeper. They are the first, face that people will see. They're the first voice that people will hear. So making sure that this is a very uptone, bubbly, person that, it has great at communication, has excellent communication skills, and is going to act as a patient care advocate. Now, this is a very important piece of the puzzle. If they can act as a patient care advocate, that will often mean that sometimes they have to have this high level of confront. And if somebody calls in and tries to cancel their appointment, they have to act as a patient advocate to try to keep them on the schedule so that they are adhering to their plan of care. So it's not just like, oh, you're canceling on a Tuesday. Okay, we'll see you on Thursday. It's how can I work with you and your schedule to get you in so that, we can stick to your plan of care. So that's what I mean by patient advocate. They've always got to have the best interest of the patient at mind. They also set expectations for the patient. When a patient first comes in, it's very scary sometimes. They're injured, they're cranky, they're not happy, they're maybe the first time they've had an injury. So the front desk helps to kind of set the tone of what to expect with physical therapy. What should they come prepared with on day one? What can they expect throughout the course of their care? So that is another important role of the front desk. The next person that is an integral part of this whole process is the patient care rep. And I am going to let Jen take over this slide, because not only does she the client liaison for us, but she has been a patient care rep throughout the course of her career. So she can help you understand the roles of this particular role, this particular post.
Great, thanks, Nicole. Yes, so patient care representative is the second person that the patient's probably going to come in contact with from the front desk. What I used to do is I would walk them back to the gym and talk to them right at that point, making them feel warm and welcome. Have a welcome to the practice folder, which contains, there's several documents in it. One could be explain the treatment services that we offer at the clinic. But one of the most important things is the treatment commitment, because when they do the intake paperwork, they're signing off on a treatment commitment. And then in the welcome folder, you're kind of going over that with them again to just get them on board. So they're hearing that twice. You're the liaison for the patient. Any upsets they have, you're trying to nip that in the bud as early as you can in the process of their plan of care, so that they continue to keep coming back and they know that, you know, they're being heard and listened to. It can be anything from a scheduling issue to maybe they're uncomfortable with their therapist. I've had that before, where females aren't comfortable with a male therapist. So you kind of are that person that they can come talk to and feel really comfortable about. So again, handling the upsets. Celebrating wins, really important. We really stress success stories from our patients, but you don't need to wait until they're being discharged. You can get a success story 2 to 3 weeks into their plan of care. You know, they can come in and say, hey, I wasn't able to tie my shoes and now I can tie my shoe. I couldn't bend over. I mean, that's a small win, but it's a big win. And so those things can be collected and then used by the marketing department as well. And it also reinforces the therapy that it's going well with the patient, because you're actually having them express it and write it down. So you're also working with the front desk. So if you know that the patient's having an issue with their schedule, you're going back to the front desk, communicating with them, trying to work out so that the front desk can then accommodate the patient. So that the connection between front desk and patient care rep is crucial to the rolling up the red carpet, as Nicole likes to say, to that patient and their whole experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said a couple of important things, that confirming that the compliance is of utmost importance is so important, because now they're hearing it from the front desk that it's important that they stay on the schedule, and they're hearing it from the patient care rep that it's important that they stick to their plan of care. So that repetition and duplication is critical for the patient to get the results that they're looking to get. So that's a very good point, Jen. So let's move on to the next, integral member of this front desk management system, and that's going to be the physical therapist. The role of the physical therapist is to really heighten the awareness of whatever problem they're having. So whatever brings them in, it's the job of the therapist to educate the patient and make sure they understand, what's going on, so they see the value in coming in and getting the care that you're going to be giving to them. The other thing is this is really where compliance starts. You're the professional as the physical therapist, and you're communicating to them as to, hey, I need your agreement. I'm going to give you everything I've got. I'm going to give you 100% effort. And in return, that's what I'm expecting. So if you're working, as an owner with your therapist, and you're seeing like, percent of kept appointments isn't high for one particular therapist, you may want to dig in and see how they're handling, especially that point, that part of their evaluation, the part where they're trying to gain agreement with the plan of care. How is that going down? Are they really reinforcing that? Are they getting the agreement with the patient? Are they, emphasizing the importance as the patient continues to get better? Because we all know that as people start feeling better, they think, oh, therapy is not as important. But as professionals, we know that if we don't continue to, get to the bottom root cause of the problem, that the problem is going to come back. So that this is an important, concept to understand. So the next kind of role that's important, Matthew, moving on, is the billing team. And Jen, I'm going to let you speak on that bit.
Yes. And just to I'm not a billing person, so claim went on TV. I just want to say that I'm relaying information from our billing team from what we know. They're communicating closely with the front desk coordinator, communicating with the patient, and identifies problems preventing claim submission. So what does that all mean? So if you have an in-house biller, that's great. If you outsource, just make sure that they have open communication with the front desk, because they want to submit claims that are clean. They are scrubbing these claims, looking for errors, communicating back with the front desk to correct those errors as quickly as they can to get that claim out as soon as possible. They also are taking the questions off of the front desk that somebody may have about a bill. So they're able to pull that off and away from the front desk and allow them to do other things. If you have an in-house billing person, maybe they're handling the insurance verification, another task that allows the front desk to then do their duties. But always open communication, because the one thing we want is to get those claims out as clean as possible. So
we get paid for what the services
exactly,
that
as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think just kind of tying this all together, the front desk is responsible. One of their main products is to have all patients arriving on time as scheduled throughout the duration of care. That is their main product. The patient care representative is enforcing that and reiterating that and taking care of any upsets so that the patient does remain compliant, and encouraging the wins so that, we're raving to, others that, hey, look at all the results that I'm getting. And, it's a Google review, and, we're tracking the NPS score and making sure that they're happy with the care that they're receiving. The therapist's role is to keep people compliant by educating them and having them be an active part of the process. And then the billing team is responsible for making sure that, in combination with the front desk, we're getting paid for the services that are being rendered. Now, that's a lot of people. We have at least 4 people or more making that happen. And we know with COVID that wasn't always feasible, especially over the last year, to have that many hands kind of working all together. So it's interesting because we came across this company called Raxia, and I think this is a nice segue into talking about some of the solutions that we can do to kind of economize at the front desk. And maybe we don't have as much manpower, but there are some solutions that we can start to implement to make things go efficiently without kind of dropping the ball. So to speak, and not covering these roles. So Andy, Scott, this is your segue in to tell us a little bit about Raxia and let us know what that service does.
Sure. So again, I'm Andy Kuan, the CEO of Raxia, and Scott Wilson, the Chief of Product at Raxia. And the two of us have a long background in automation, automating healthcare processes and financial services. And so when we started Raxia, really our vision was to come up with a way to help practices, optimize and personalize their patient interactions, and really the non-clinical ones, all those business operations, front desk, billing, the patient journey. So actually, do you have the slide?
Yep, Matthew, pop that up there.
So if you go to the next slide, that actually sort of shows our solution and how we view the patient's journey. And it's sort of all those interactions between the patient and the practice, from pre-arrival, appointment reminders, showing up, and how they interact and enter the practice, the entry itself, and then post-visit, how you continue to communicate with the patient after they've left the practice. And that entire journey we've sought to automate. And in the last year, front desk staff have really seen a lot of responsibilities fall to them that hadn't been there before. Suddenly they're gatekeepers, they're screening, they're doing COVID checks. They're the ones deciding, do I need to turn this patient away because they have symptoms? They're taking on a lot more responsibility. And so, our purpose here, Raxia is trying to provide the automation tools that can free the front desk to really focus on building the relationships. Really, instead of being bogged down in much of the tedium, if we can bring automation in, and not just automation, but coming up with a system that can personalize those interactions at scale and allow the patients to motivate the patients to take action, that ultimately streamlines all of those processes, those interactions in the patient journey. And again, it frees vet staff to really spend their time building relationships, spending their time on higher leverage duties, to really sort of bring in that productivity and efficiency that is kind of getting eaten into again by all this other responsibility that has been laid upon them.
Yeah. So maybe somebody who, has a system like Raxia, it's a little more feasible to combine the front desk with a patient care rep responsibility because they have more free time ability to do it because they have more automated process for check-in and for, collecting the intake paperwork and, things and collecting of co-pays, co-insurances and things of that nature, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you go to the next slide, we actually have a bunch of results once the automation is brought in. I mean, I know, Scott, you've got some great stories about how we've achieved these numbers in PT practices over the past year.
Yeah, as Andy mentioned, the role of the front desk has changed quite a bit, especially with COVID, having to control patient flow and adhere to social distancing guidelines, maintaining, having to do more also just with the physical space that folks have to work with. So what we have is an automated system that basically automates, as Andy mentioned, interactions with patients, but also different workflows. So when someone schedules an appointment, we can then automate appointment reminders. We can send out paperwork. And what we do is we can scan the scheduling data in any EHR system to understand, why the patient is coming to PT, and based on their unique, plan of care, we can then send out information that's specific to them that they can complete prior to the appointment. We can then do things like COVID screening and check-ins and have a virtual waiting room, so to speak, so that, folks can still adhere to those social distancing guidelines. And, we're always kind of measuring, our effect on the front desk. And so what you see here are, some data points that we always hope to achieve. So in terms of like patients doing self-check-in and completing that intake paperwork prior to coming into the office, it's typically in the 90 to 96% of patients will, comply with that. They'll complete the paperwork. And that's helpful because the folks that don't do that, that takes up time that could potentially eat into clinical time. That could also send, the day's schedule into a little bit of a tailspin if they have to account for additional time for patients to complete that paperwork. And what we've seen with our customers is they'll tend to start padding appointments when they know it's a progress note or they know that's a new patient that needs to complete paperwork. And then they're starting to see less patients every day and the schedule just becomes less efficient. So it's really important for us to make sure with our appointment reminder system and the intake system to make sure that patients show up on time and they have that paperwork completed. And then we have, as Andy had mentioned, some applications around co-pays and asking patients also to pay any balance that might exist, and then also enroll in Autopay, which has been very successful, so that any balance that comes up will automatically be charged to a check or credit card. So those have been really efficient ways that we've been able to sort of help both the front desk team, the front office staff, and the back office team by handling those patient payments and balances.
Yeah, no, and I think you said a couple really great things, but one of the things that I've noticed just in the last year working with a lot of different startups is, a lot of startups are going the route with like less space, like 438 square feet is the last PA call that I just did. So they have less space. So if you can, economize those processes and make them more efficient and have it be less room that it takes up, you almost can get away with doing like a virtual front desk, right? You know, you don't need a designated space or a designated waiting room with an automated check-in system.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, many of our clients will have this virtual waiting room concept where folks won't even actually come into a waiting room. They'll just go right back to see the PT. So they're kind of bypassing that whole concept.
Right.
And that's been working really well.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's prime real estate, right? If you can utilize more of your space for treating and less of your space for, you know, kind of the waiting room idea, it just seems much more efficient to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, good. So tell me more about the autopay option, because I do think that's one of the issues, you know, that we train a lot on in MEG Academy. I think this is one of the other main responsibilities of the front desk, is to be able to ask for payment when services are being rendered. You know, it's a big no-no to you know, have your percent of over the counters collected to be anything less than 100%. But if we can set up your systems to have it be more of a automatic, where they have this auto pay feature, can you talk more on how that works and how that's helped with decreasing AR and things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is in the workflow for a new patient, if we're sending out patient paperwork, as part of that, we have several interactions where we're explaining, you know, depending on the practice, what the financial policy is. We ask that they put a credit card or, you know, bank account on file. And, you know, it's really important to be just very clear, communicate very clearly what those policies are, what they mean. And then, you know, ask that folks do put those, you know, those payment, again, credit card or check on file. And then after, you know, that happens, as they go through that workflow, we send them an email that just kind of, again, highlights what this means, explains what the process is gonna look like. Then when they come to check in, as part of the check-in process, you know, obviously we're confirming the appointment, and we have this multimodal system that kind of understands how best to communicate with the patient, whether that's over voice or text or email, to make sure we decrease no-shows. So, and then when they come to check in, you know, we'll ask them to pay their copay.
Right.
If they didn't put the credit card on file during the intake process, we'll ask them again to please do that. Once they pay that, they get an automatic receipt that, you know, tells them what they paid. They then have the ability to access an account. They'll have all of their payment history and explanations. We have like consumer-friendly explanations of, you know, various codes so people can understand what they're paying for and why, and any insurance that, you know, obviously, whether it's an insurance adjustment or a payment, they can see a whole history of all of their payments.
Okay.
And then, of course, when, let's say someone goes through their course of treatment, they've paid, you know, their copays, and then there's a claim that goes out to the insurance company. We don't interact with insurance companies, but once there's a patient balance because of, you know, high deductibles, we'll then notify the patient that they have a balance. This is all automated. We'll let them know that we're going to run their credit card. Usually it's 5 days after they receive the first notification. They have the ability then to call a billing team member or log into an account to get questions, or answers to any questions they might have. And then we would then automatically run the credit card, send them a receipt. So that's kind of the process in terms of how the workflows come together. Okay,
great. We have a question from Mark. He wants to know, does the payment from your software get linked to the billing software?
It does in some situations. In some situations, we have an interface that, you know, either the front desk team or the back office billing team can access to see payments in real time. In some cases, depending on the EHR, we can do a write back so that it does get pushed into the EHR. So it just depends on the, you know, the setup.
Okay, and same thing. So so some EMRs or EHRs you're integrated with, and some you are not.
Correct.
Is that the long and short of it?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, good. So you guys, if you have questions on that, obviously reach out to Andy and Scott if it has to do with integration, but that's not required, right? That's something that you're working to look at getting integrated with more EMRs as we go on.
Exactly. It's not required. I mean, we are always trying to reduce data entry, but really as a business, our main objective is to automate these routine and redundant patient interactions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that's our primary focus.
Okay. And I know when we talked before, you said that the AI, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a tech person, so don't make fun of me, Matthew, but the AI, gets more intelligent as you go on. Can you talk a little bit about that idea? And if I butchered that concept, please forgive me. But how does that work? Where you said that the AI improves?
Yeah, I can maybe start, Andy, and you could,
Sure.
add anything that I missed. So one of the things that we've got lots of different clients in lots of different types of specialties. One of the things that really have drawn us to PT and why we've put a lot of focus in PT is because the relationship that PTs have compared to our other customers with their patients is very different. You've got this, sort of longitudinal relationship over time. You're seeing patients. There are a lot of encounters. PTs get to really know, the people that they're treating very well. And it gives us the opportunity also to understand these folks as well. So what we do is we understand how they interact with our system, what time of day, what kind of device. We ask for a lot of feedback throughout these processes that I've described. And we take that feedback and it helps us to characterize their, people's inclinations and their preferences. And so each interaction that we have tends to get better and better over time. So with machine learning, we're able to take all of this data and understand, how people want to be communicated with, interacted with, and we optimize the patient experience over the course of, their treatment and their coming to the practice or doing telehealth, whatever it might be. And that's how we sort of optimize over time.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit to the user friendliness or the onboarding of this? Like, how difficult is it to integrate into, your current system that you might have?
Yeah. So it's typically, once we get everything up and running, we pay a lot of attention and we spend a lot of time understanding the workflow of the practice, both the front office and the back office. And typically what we see is it takes about 2 weeks from when we launch to get very high patient acceptance and very high acceptance from the team members inside the PT. So what we're doing is we're constantly measuring, again, the way everybody interacts with the system, the feedback we're constantly getting from both people that work in the practice and the patients. And that continues to optimize everything, not only just for the first 2 weeks, but continuously as we, push the program out, over longer periods of time.
And we've definitely found too with the onboarding that, the buy-in from the front staff is really important. It's not just enough to sort of tell them use the tool. You have to train them. You got to convey to them the benefits of using this tool.
Mm-hmm.
And once they've engaged with it, they invariably discover that it has made a world of difference to their daily processes, to eliminating the tedium and to just making their life, their job far more efficient than it had been before.
Yeah.
But you got to get that buy-in. You got to get that, it really is a team effort during those first 2 weeks of onboarding to get them to understand the vision here.
Yeah. Well, what I like too is it standardizes the way that we do things. It's a standard operating procedure now that, it's all done. The paperwork, intake paperwork is all done this way, whether some people are downloading it from the internet and then sending it in and carrying it or, sending it in via port. It's all done the same way. And I think anytime you can get these like SOPs ironed out and this is the way that we do it, it just simplifies everything, and I can completely see how that would be beneficial aspect of this to the front desk. We have another question. Okay. Do you ever see a world where a practice would not require a front office member? I think that's a great question.
I can take that one again, Andy, and maybe you can follow up. I don't think so. I think, and Nicole, we've talked about this a little bit, around things like scheduling, and there's other things where a person needs to be involved, right? People need to get to know patients. You know, I was just talking to one of our clients 2 days ago about appointment reminders and scheduling, and you know, she's a front desk coordinator. She knows everything about her patients. Like, I know that this person takes public transportation. Sometimes the bus can be 15 minutes late. So I'm going to, you know, it's stuff like that we could never automate, nor do we think should be automated.
Right.
You know, we work with some great front desk teams that really know their patients and can make human decisions that, you know, we could never or would want to make. And I think the patients really appreciate that. And that's just a better experience. So we really try to optimize things that are routine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I respect that answer. I will say, I think Mike, who asked that question, I think that is an excellent question. And we really were forced to look at that as an option, you know, in the last year. And I think, you know, the answer is that some people had to. I think some people didn't have a choice. Because of the furloughs and the, you know, of the shutdowns and all that stuff. So, you know, I do think that we are certainly moving in that direction to have it be kind of an unmanned position. But I still think some of the concepts and some of the duties, you know, I agree with you, Scott, have to be manned by someone. But I think consolidating the responsibilities and automating what you can to offload, you know, the actual manpower, so that you can, maybe you have a post on your team that is more a patient care representative, you know, type of person that covers some of the front desk responsibilities that aren't covered by the automated processes that you have. And I would love to see, you know, in development for whatever EMR can do it, is a more automated scheduling process. You know, and again, I know that there's some little nuances and some things that, you know, it does help to have a person kind of working that out. But, you know, streamlining the majority of that process would be ideal. So I think that's a really great question. And it's, you know, it's a gray area, you know, I don't think it's a yes, no, black, white. But I do think it's a very interesting concept.
I mean, I think at this point, like, you know, again, those low leverage duties, those things that are ripping envelopes open and taking checks out. I mean, there's no reason a person should be doing that. That person should spend their time building relationship, learning the patients, learning what they need, and learning how to, you know, advocate for them, right? It's those things they should be spending time on. And, you know, there is still a difference between low leverage and high leverage duties.
Sure.
And those high leverage duties are the ones that you still want a person doing, because you know, there is something to interacting with an actual person on what are oftentimes very personal matters when you're dealing with injuries, when you're dealing with health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of our training, and just for those of you who are MEG Academy members understand this, but for those of you who aren't, the way that our program is structured is originally it was built kind of educating the CEO and providing them training on how to kind of bridge the gap from when you graduate PT school, which we get like zero, big goose egg of training on how to be a CEO, executive, and manager, to when now you have to open your own doors and you have to manage others and you have to know, you know, what your CEO hat entails, and, you know, all the information that you're now having to be an expert on and be able to run a business. So we did a good job at that. But what we had to develop probably 2 years ago now, Jen, were the certification programs. And what we did is we built out programs that are speaking directly to the employees and onboarding them and training them. So that's where we have our certifications, where we onboard your new hires as to what it takes to be a good employee. So your soft skills, like your communication and how to gain agreement and how to resolve conflict and things of that nature. And then you go to your specific post. And I'll tell you, one of our more robust certification programs happens to be the front desk post training. So Matthew is kind of opening up the screen here. So if you go to the staff certifications and you pop open the front desk coordinator certification, you can see, we have that every single one of those, that's a 0 out of 3. Each one of those is a training module that you go through. And you can see with the enhancement, if you go to the front desk enhancement, all the different handles that we show you how to manage and your team how to manage. So we talk about the front desk management system, but it's, talking about how to, train your staff, how to collect copays and how to, what if somebody forgets their wallet? How do you handle that? What if somebody wants to cancel? How do you handle that? So we do an extensive amount of training with that front desk because it is such an integral role at this point in time. And, I'm by no means saying that you can't have it, completely unmanned. My thought is automate what you can. So you're absolutely right, Andy. So you can focus on the real meat and potatoes of what is important at running an effective front desk. And the people skills are everything. So if we can get our front desk trained at being good patient care advocates and knowing how to handle all of these things, your percent of caps are going to go up, your over the counters collective are going to go up, your revenue is going to go up, the bottom line will go up, and your patient satisfaction will go up because they're going to feel like, oh man, this is, yeah, it sucks to be hurt, but man, I wouldn't want to be any other place. Jen, you could probably speak to this because I'm sure you had.
Yeah. And what I really like that you were talking about earlier, Scott, is that a patient can go in and they might get their questions answered without even having to talk to a real person.
Yeah.
If they have a question about the adjustment or whatever the explanation of benefits, I really like that. And I like the intake forms being taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with Andy and Nicole that I do think we need human interaction, especially nowadays. We're all so much on our phones. Especially, I think of our elderly patients, they like that. They prefer, to have a voice that they can talk to and share, what's going on with their day. We call it, give me 5.
Yes.
Right? Always said 5 things about your patient. And we require that of everybody in the clinic. But I like the automation. I like everything I'm hearing. But still having, as Andy said, to nurture the customer experience, having that support from a real person.
Yes, I agree. And if you don't know MEG Academy and you'd like to know more about those certification programs, I'm going to have Matthew pop up the contact us link. So please reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to chat with you about what that's all about. Can we see some examples of these automated tasks? Elaine from up in Canada. Hi, Elaine.
Yeah, so I think if we could call up the slides again, I think slide 2 has a list of some of the what we sort of consider applications. So I think it's just a few up from there. Should be the second slide. Right there, yeah. So so we mentioned digital intake. The way what we consider that to be is new patient paperwork, and then throughout the care plan, the course, the journey that the patients go through at PT, depending on the appointment type, any patient assessments that need to be filled out along that sort of journey also get sent out with appointment reminders, things of that nature. Touchless payments, the ability to make copays, paying balances, all of that is automated, and also all of the outreach and interaction kind of required to nudge patients to make those payments is required. And for those patients that do require a payment plan, we can set that up in our system and we can automate that. So we hear a lot that, there's some folks that just need a payment plan. They can't necessarily afford their medical bills. And some of the pain points around that are when you agree to set up a payment plan for a patient, you have to call them every month. You have to still sort of go out and get that payment. We automate that entire process. All of your consents and your consent management is part of sort of that intake process and check-in process. Registration and COVID screening, virtual check-ins, again, sort of optimizing your physical space by having patients come into the practice when you're ready to see them is something that is also automated. And then we do patient feedback as well. So as part of these workflows, and even after an encounter with a patient, we can contact them, again, in a multimodal way. Elicit feedback. Net Promoter Score is something that we do. If there's a negative Net Promoter Score, we can alert the practice right away. If there's a positive Net Promoter Score, we then prompt folks to please leave a review. So that's all automated.
Awesome.
And obviously, if there are any questions or if anyone is interested in seeing a software demo, we can always schedule that as well.
We have a question from Katie. With the intake forms, do they input into the client's profile if Raxia is integrated?
It's going to be a PDF that would be attached to the profile. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so it would just come in as an attachment.
Exactly. Yeah.
To be clear,
ways to do integration with certain, again, EHRs where we're doing like discrete notes or updating certain fields. But right now, it's an attached PDF. But
the PDF is not actually what the patient is filling out. So it's not the thing where you get a PDF and you have to like click and fill, because we've had customers of ours who had spend enormous amounts of time explaining how to the patients how to fill out a PDF online. It's a terrible experience.
Yeah.
So this is a PDF generated by our system.
Okay.
All these interactions are happening either, they're all happening online. So, that intake, it's a text message that tells your patient, ahead of time, you've got an appointment coming up. You might want to fill out some of these forms, and then they can do it from their own device. There's no need to have, iPads being handed out in the waiting room or anything. They're using the device that they're already comfortable with, they're already familiar with. When it's like 1 hour before, they get notified that, hey, you got to fill out these couple extra things. Let's collect do you want to do Autopay? Let's collect a copay. And then they're texted again and they can go right into their appointment. So it's all the communication is being handled electronically, and it allows all of this. That's how the virtualization happens. That's why the waiting room is no longer a physical space.
Sure.
It's their car.
Yeah. So do you ever get any pushback from, like the elderly population that, prefers not to use technology?
We actually did a study on this, and you would be surprised that the elderly population have very little difficulty using this technology at this point. Okay. We in our study on this, actually the highest level of the responsiveness has actually been sort of that Gen X through baby boomer stretch. And baby boomers go up to 70 now. I mean, it's they're all online. There is very little difficulty in accepting and adopting these modalities.
Good. Well, very good. All right. If there's no more questions, I just want us to wrap it up. Before I do, I would love to have like one little closing thought or tip or piece of advice from our panelists. Jen, I won't put you on the spot first, but think about it. I already see her panicking over there. But Scott, do you have any insights or word of advice to kind of send off?
Yeah, I think as we consider automation or practice owners consider automation or just technology in general, I think obviously really understanding the pain point and being able to sort of understand the magnitude of that pain point. And perhaps one way to do that is by understanding who it affects and kind of mapping out what the magnitude of the problem is for whether it's the front desk staff, the patients, the PT, the practice as a whole.
Mhm.
It's really important to understand the magnitude of the problem because you want to metric any vendor you bring on board who's going to solve that problem. And I'm sort of calling attention to this because we talk to practice owners every week who have invested a lot of money in,
Yeah.
adding intake into their patient portal or buying a very expensive kiosk. And if you're not nudging patients or activating them or, doing automation in a more personalized way, you're not going to convert patients, meaning they're not going to make the payment, they're not going to do the digital check-in. And I think once you understand those metrics, hold vendors accountable, make sure you have KPIs in place, that kind of thing.
Sure. Okay. Just real quick question from Mike. He said he might have missed this, but he said, does Raxia do anything involving benefit checking or authorization? So you don't do like insurance verification, right?
Not now. It is something that's on our roadmap, but that is not something we offer today.
Okay, good. Okay. Andy, do you have any word of advice?
I echo what Scott said. Metrics are everything.
Yeah.
If you're not measuring performance and if you're not looking at outcomes, it's not. You got to look all the way at the end. What are you trying to achieve?
Yes.
Then you could run into trouble adopting technologies that aren't going to push those outcomes. We know plenty of practices that brought in a portal and discovered that 95% of their patients don't use portals.
Yes. Absolutely.
It's those end behaviors that you're trying to shoot for here.
Sure. And I'm just going to add my little word of advice is to kind of keep an open mind. I do feel like, we can't think about running the practice the same way we did. Brian always likes to say 1995, but even 2019, it's changed in that short of a period of time that we need to be forward thinking and open to using technology to help assist us become, more efficient. And again, not to take the manpower out, but to redirect those energies to the things that are really going to enrich the experience for the patient. Jen, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say, kind of rolling off of what you just said, to remember to be a good listener with your patients. Just like when a therapist is now, we do that, they're doing their notes while they're with the patient doing the eval, is still making that direct eye contact and communicating with the patient. So even though we're automating, we still need to have the ability to connect with that patient and not make them feel that it's a robotic experience. So that's just what I'd add that.
Very well said.
I'm going to say something my granddaddy would say, but I don't think it would be appropriate. So.
Oh no, I want to hear it now.
People have to reach in directly to me to get that quote.
Okay, good. Hey, contact us. Let us know if you want to hear Jen's quote. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate